What's up, guys? Paddy here again from the 2 Plus podcast for another battle report. This one coming from a recent tournament Alex and I played in. It's a 1,500 point tournament. This was game two. Unfortunately, to Dave, shout out, I forgot to take enough photos for the start and end of that game one, but I drew my first game, 10 all, with Dave playing Bretonia, and this is my second game, which was against High Elves. You can see at the top here is Eric's High Elves. He is rocking from left to right a unit of Illyrian Reavers, 2 units of 10 archers, 2 bolt throwers, a Frost Phoenix, a level 4 on a steed, big block of Phoenix Guard, some more Reavers at the front here, and a smaller block of White Lions behind them. For my force, I have some Deepwood Scouts with Hagbane tips, a Waystalker, Wild Riders, Glade Guard with Arcane Bodkins, Sisters of the Thorn, my Glade Rider bus with a level 2 running Battle Magic and Lore Familiar, level 4 on a Warhawk with the Oaken Stave and Ruby Ring, and then another unit of Deepwood Scouts with Hagbane tips, and then down the bottom here are my Way Watchers running Swift Shiver Shards. So this matchup was a bit of a like for like matchup, but I think my list was a bit more tooled to lean into the strengths of it. It was a very ranged, focused list, but I went all in with fireballs and pillars, where Eric had a bit more balance with those bricks of infantry there. So right off the bat, and Eric identified it as well, it felt like the advantage was in my favor, just being able to abuse my range advantage, which I'll get into in a bit. But that's kind of what led to this deployment. As you can see, my main force here is all hidden behind a forest. That's to protect them from the main threat early on for me, which are these bolt throwers and probably the archers. I wasn't aware that he was going to deploy his level 4 that far back, but that was a good thing for me because it kept my guys even further out of Fireball and Pillar and the like of that. Because I had scouts here as well, I was able to kind of suffocate Eric into this corner of the board. He deployed very safely in this top left corner. So I was able to kind of right off the bat own about 2/3 of the board. Let's say half, because these guys aren't really doing squat over there. But that's what this scout little quadrant over here was doing, out of range of a move and a fireball. So if he wanted to clear this flank, he had to march with his mage, and that would mean he couldn't fireball, and I would be able to shoot it. But off the bat, deployment for me seemed to work in my favor. So this is at the end of both of our turns, turn ones, I should say. You can see that my Way Watchers over here have drawn the attention of the Frost Phoenix, which is a great result for me because that was one of the pieces that could really pressure straight through here. It's tough, although not a huge armor save. I may have been able to kill it on its way in, but it was definitely had the potential to threaten my main force in the middle here. Um, I deployed my Way Watchers a little bit too far left, which meant this bolt thrower could see them, as well as these Reavers, which meant I lost a couple on the way there, but their job was essentially done. They didn't die, and they managed to draw something out of that central part of the battlefield. I was able to return fire and take off a few White Lions and a couple of Illyrian Reavers, and I also managed to get 2 pillars off and a tree singing. Um, the intention of killing these guys early was, as I said, I wanted to kind of suffocate Eric's force and really push into this quadrant here while protecting these guys down here. My Glade Guard, I don't think we're in range of anything, but it didn't really bother me. Sisters didn't need to do much. They just needed to cast, at this stage of the game, cast Pillar and let it run through. And my level 2, I believe, also got Pillar off, which meant that right off the bat, I was able to start pushing that to the top left of the screen, allowing these guys here to focus on these forces here to try and push his forces back. One mistake I would point out here, my Wild Riders, I always feel so eager to do stuff with them, but really all I did here was put them in range of the bolt throwers, which end up taking a few of them out over the next couple turns. I wasn't able to wipe out a bolt throw on turn one, unfortunately, with my poison shooting. So it survived, which is a shame, because as you'll see here, I lose a couple wild riders. He manages to shoot both of these bolt throwers. I believe he shot both of them into my wild riders, and I think he killed three or four. So already that unit had kind of lost its oomph. This was, I believe, at the end of his turn two. So I've just kind of played shenanigans with my Way Watchers, just bringing them in and out of vision. They weren't going to kill anything, so they were just kind of a distraction at this stage. Um, he had kind of moved his Reavers back here to protect this flank and get a pillar of fire off. But the White Lions and the Phoenix Guard in a matchup like this were just very undermatched or unmatched. They didn't really have a role. They were kind of sitting ducks. So I was able to ignore them essentially. Of course, I was still dealing damage to them because they were close. But the Phoenix Guard, I had already decided I wasn't touching until the end of the game, basically, because the only thing that could hurt me at the moment were these range guys and the level four, and probably the Frost Phoenix. So at the end of my level two, I annihilate the White Lions and the Reavers here. So that flank of his is completely gone, opening up fire to his level four, which I think I left him on one wound after the first round of shooting. My Wild Riders go into the forest just to, I don't know, do something with them. I'd kind of given up on them. But most importantly, the pillar here, I think I rolled a six and I was able to push it through these guys already. The Phoenix Guard have a 5-up ward. I think it's a 5-up ward. Someone can correct me in the comments there. And a 4-up save. So Pillar, although good, wasn't as effective as them. But what I really wanted to do is start pushing it through this ranged block over here. So I think I killed four archers and they panic. Unfortunately for Eric, he had some pretty terrible rolling with his panic tests here. And they flee through there. And I was also able to poison one of his bolt throwers off, which immediately relieved a bit of pressure for me. And you could see that I've started to move up now because as that range threat decreases, I can now start moving a bit more freely and start really pressuring over there with some more ranged threats. As you can see there, the pillar damage is insane. This is the first game I've really had where pillar showed its worth. Eric's force is pretty stationary, so I managed to kill a fair few of his archers just by passing through it, and then like he lost a couple more from the peril test by fleeing away through his unit. And this pillar just sitting here in a very good location for me to then try and push it through that unit again at the end of my turn, start of his next turn. Over here, you can really see the value of way watchers. For me, if anyone watched my tactics video on defensive deployment, you always need to have something to dangle in front of your enemy that they want to go and kill. Way watchers seem to draw the ire of every enemy I play against. I think it might be the cool models or just the fact that they're cheap, squishy skirmishers that are slightly more expensive, although not still not hugely overcosted. And that generally draws the attention of something from their army. So they were out here on this left flank. It's drawn the attention of one main threat and the Reavers, pushing them away from the units that I really wanted to protect. On the other side of the battlefield, we'd kind of got in this tangle where I was trying to kill his level four, and he had battle magic. So he had a fireball ruby ring, and that's a pillar. Um, we were playing it incorrectly, but it created a massive moment in the game that was really fun. He was playing, he had a 6-up armor save. I didn't check it, but I also didn't know. It's pretty common, I think, for 6th, 8th ed players to think that horses give everyone barding now, but he made two 6-up armor saves that saved 2 wounds on his level four, which he shouldn't have rolled, but to be honest, it was hilarious. So it's all fine here. And that for me was my moment to try and really clear this flank. But those saves meant that it was his turn next, and he had Fireball and Ruby Ring lined up to, in my experience, Wood Elves just melt to Fireball. So this was quite a precarious little situation for me, which we'll get back to in a second because it gets even more fun. As you can see, Pillar again has it's annihilated one unit of archers, and then it started to decimate this second unit of archers. It also caused a panic on this bolt thrower to fall back in good order behind a hill, which was pretty unfortunate for Eric. As I said, I think he failed panic tests on all of these units here. So sometimes the dice just aren't very friendly. But the pillar against lined up bricks of units, it's devastating. And that was one pillar just wiping out. Sure, weak, no armored guys, but the potential there is just, yeah, it's pretty gross. So as you can see now, this is the start or end of turn four. I can't remember. Sorry, but as you can see, the board is starting to clear out. My Way Watchers have eventually died. Um, as you just saw then, there's a few archers left and a bolt thrower that can't really do much behind the hill. My Wild Riders have died. This little duel up here is going on. The Frostheart Phoenix has taken a wound, but is kind of in a bad position for it at the moment, just doing nothing. And my force here is basically unchallenged, meaning I can start moving out and clearing out the rest of it. Obviously, a big chunky unit of Phoenix Guard being my next target. Now, this was the moment I was talking about, which just it was a bit stupid, really. But he, after making his armor saves, moved up and had Ruby Ring and Fireball to cast. I forget which one of these he cast, but he managed to get one of them off. And that's my fated dispel roll there. A nice little 12. It's pretty ridiculous and that stuff happens, but it kind of was a balancing act for the armor saves that were probably not existent, but that Fireball could have been really devastating. Could have caused, most likely would have caused a panic, and leadership 8 is no one's friend. Just ask Eric and me, who's failed about 4,000 of them in my times. So after this, they managed to kill the mage, and then I just run away behind this terrain just because their job was done. I didn't want to risk anything. Don't think they could die, but maybe the bolt thrower could have caused some shenanigans. As I said, my attention now turned to the big block of Phoenix Guard, which is worth a chunk of points. He had, I think it was 20 of them. The infantry are just in such a bad spot in Old World, especially against a list like this, which they just have no chance in engaging with. So, as you can see here, I start just unleashing everything on them. I had a pillar bouncing through both. I had Fireball, Ruby Ring, Fireball here, poison javelins there, poison arrows there, poison arrows there, and eventually just whittling them down piece by piece. They didn't stand a chance, and eventually they fall towards, I think it was turn 5. The Frostheart Phoenix then tries to engage my scouts, but I managed to pass my initial enemy sighted test, march out of there. I think I get Arcane Urgency again and march out of there again, leaving him nothing really to do. All I wanted to do was flee with whatever he charged as well. So I was pretty safe there. And this is the end of the board, the end of the game, the board state at the end of the game. You can see his Frostheart Phoenix there has one wound left, didn't manage to catch anything. I wiped the Phoenix Guard. I wiped the rest of the archers there, and there's a bolt thrower left, which I couldn't get through to, unfortunately. But yeah, he had lost everything except the bolt thrower and the Phoenix, and most of my force outside of my Way Watchers and my Wild Riders remained on the table. So this ended up being a 17-3 victory, I think, from memory, or 17-4. These Glade Guard, the victory points set up for the tournament was you needed a ranked unit to get a bonus point for table quarters. So these Glade Guard managed to secure an extra bonus point for me after doing absolutely nothing the whole game. So that was a nice little neat trick. But yeah, pretty convincing victory for me in the end. There's a few takeaways from this. Every time I play Wood Elves, I try and learn something. And one of the main things that I learn, or I've continued to learn, is that at least for Wood Elves, and it's transferable for a lot of armies in the game, is that it's essentially a game of movement and capturing areas of the board and influencing the game from there. For Wood Elves, I have to clear space, move into it, and then shoot. So I need to identify the weak flank and possibly even give up one of my own flanks in order to get a preferable position in terms of territory on the battlefield. The other thing is to use range advantage. Knowing your ranges of your own army and also your enemies is key for an army like Wood Elves. and any shooting army, and to be honest, any army in the game. You can really manipulate what your opponent can do if you know how far they can move, shoot, or if they're going to need to march and in turn not shoot. And then the other thing is to identify the main threats. So as I said, I wanted to clear his ranged threats first, and then I could focus on the Phoenix Guard at the end. I managed to distract the Frostheart Phoenix, buying me more time to clear the rest of the stuff that was actually a threat to me. And then I was able to move to an advantageous position and then fire on the threats that were remaining. But yeah, that wraps it up for me, guys. If you're liking these battle reports, please let us know. Don't forget, like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you in the next battle report.